Okay. We start with the next chapter, people. The name of the chapter is Chemical Bonding and Molecular Structure. It's a very, very important chapter in inorganic chemistry. Chemical bonding and molecular structure helps us understand how molecules are formed. What are the different ways in which molecules are formed. इस चैप्टर के जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स है दे आर रिक्वायर्ड, ठीक है, इन ऑलमोस्ट एवरी अदर चैप्टर ऑफ केमिस्ट्री, इन ऑलमोस्ट एवरी ऑर्गेनिक, ऑलमोस्ट एवरी इनऑर्गेनिक चैप्टर में ये फंडामेंटल हमें लगता है. Now let us first understand, why do atoms convert into molecules? I repeat, the first thing that we need to understand is, why are atoms converting into molecules in the first place? So let's say I have hydrogen atom. Hydrogen, atomic number 1. What is the electronic configuration for hydrogen? 1s1. So we know that hydrogen in normal state exists in the form of H2 molecule. Why doesn't hydrogen in the normal state exist at hydrogen atom? उसको molecule बनने की क्या जरूरत है? Why does hydrogen has to convert from an atom into a molecule? Or yeah, two hydrogen atoms have to come close together to form a bond. And the reason for that is, when it is in the atomic state, it has very high energy and lesser stability. When two hydrogen atoms come close to each other, they form a bond. When they convert into H2 molecule, the reason to form a molecule is they are more stable in molecular state, and it has a lower energy when you convert that hydrogen atom to hydrogen molecule. Did you people get that? So what happens here is, let's say I have a hydrogen atom, and bond बनाने के लिए I would need one more hydrogen atom. So let's say this is the second hydrogen atom. इसका भी atomic number 1 and electronic configuration 1s1. But remember, if the two, they have to form a bond, the first hydrogen should have a clockwise spin, and the second hydrogen should have the electron of the first hydrogen will have a clockwise spin, and the electron of the second hydrogen will have an anti-clockwise spin. Okay, with me till here? So what happens initially is, the two hydrogen atoms, they're very far from each other. I repeat, the two hydrogen atoms, they are very, very far from each other. Now, इसको हम एनर्जी के टर्म्स में प्लॉट करते हैं. So let's say I have, this is my y-axis, और let's say यहाँ पे मेरा x-axis है. What I have on y-axis is potential energy of the system. I repeat, y-axis पे I have potential energy, and on the x-axis I have distance between the atoms. Initially, the two hydrogen atoms are very far from each other. When they're very far from each other, the potential energy of the system is almost zero. Almost zero. Then what happens is, ये जो दो hydrogen atoms है, they start coming close to each other. The reason they're coming close to each other, because they want to form a bond. I repeat, the two hydrogen atoms, they start coming close to each other. The moment they start coming close to each other, the potential energy of the system starts to drop. So I repeat, in the first case, the hydrogen atoms were very far from each other. Now the two hydrogen atoms, they are coming close to each other. Now when they start coming close to each other, there are some forces which start to act. What are the different forces? दोनों हाइड्रोजन के बीच में I have nucleus, and let's say there is an electron. So between the two electrons, which force will act? Will there be attraction or will there be repulsion? There will be force of repulsion. I'm just writing shortcut mein as FOR. There will be forces of repulsion. Similarly, between the two nuclei, there's going to be what? There's going to be a force of repulsion. But when I consider between the nucleus and the electron, between the nucleus and the electron, there's going to be force of attraction. So when they're very far from each other, none of the forces are really acting. When they're very far, na force of attraction hai, or there is no force of repulsion. They start coming close to each other. What starts happening? Forces of attraction and forces of repulsion will start interacting. Eventually you reach a stage, I repeat, eventually you reach a stage where the forces of attraction and the forces of repulsion, they become equal. I repeat, you reach a stage where the forces of attraction, what's happening over here is that the force of attraction becomes equal to the force of repulsion. And the moment the force of attraction becomes equal to the force of repulsion, we say that the bond has formed. That the bond has formed between the two atoms. And at that point, the system will also have the lowest potential energy. I repeat, the system will be at its lowest energy level, but lowest energy means highest stability, and this energy is classified as bond energy. With me till here? But let's say I keep on forcing them to come closer to each other. The point where force of attraction was at force of repulsion was the lowest point, but I keep forcing them to come close to each other. The moment I do that, forces of repulsion overpower forces of attraction, and the potential energy of the system increases. So what has happened over here is we have forced the two atoms to come even closer to each other. And at this stage, forces of repulsion overpower forces of attraction. Basically, the system is becoming unstable, and that is not possible. Eventually, it will again go back to the stage where the potential energy is the lowest. This is an overall way of trying to understand कि एक bond कैसे form होता है along with its energy curve. Bond energy curve बोल सकते हैं यहाँ पे से. Now, whenever a bond is formed, there are different types of bonds. Can someone tell me what are the different types of bonds that we have learned? What are the different types of bonds till 10th standard that we have learned? Sabse pehla, yes. Ionic bond. Ionic bond is also called as electrovalent bond. Why do you call it as electrovalent? Because it is electrostatic force of attraction. So ionic bond is also called as an electrovalent bond. second covalent bond, third coordinate bond. Do people have heard about that bond? Coordinate bond. नहीं सुना है तो इसके बारे में पढ़ेंगे. Coordinate bond. Coordinate bond is also called as dative bond. Anything else after that? There is one more type of bond, the bond between metals. It is called as a metallic bond. Now all these bonds are also called as interatomic bonds. All these bonds, people, are also called as interatomic bonds. It's simple because these are the bonds which are present between two atoms. But we also have something called as intermolecular bonds. This is something new जो हमने lower standard तक जरा भी पढ़ा नहीं है. Intermolecular bonds. Now what do you mean by intermolecular bonds? Bonds which are present between two molecules. Now there are two types that we'll study in this chapter in detail. The first one is called as hydrogen bonding or hydrogen bond, and the second one is called as van der Waals bond, या van der Waals forces. उसमें there are further more categories which we will study when we move ahead in the chapter. So did you people get that? We have interatomic bonds, which is ionic bond, covalent bond, coordinate bond and metallic bond, and हमारे पास है intermolecular bonds, which are hydrogen bonds and van der Waals. ठीक है? Before we go into each of these in depth, can someone tell me what is an ionic bond? How is an ionic bond formed? It's just nothing but a force of attraction between a cation and an ion. How is an ionic bond formed? It is formed by transfer of electrons from the electropositive element to the electro. So can I say that an ionic bond is formed between electropositive element and electronegative element? Yes or no? We learn this in periodic table. When the difference in electronegativity is around more than 1.7, we say that the bond between the two is an ionic bond. What is a covalent bond, or between which type of elements will you get a covalent bond? और सबसे पहला, can anyone tell me what is a covalent bond? Mutual sharing of electrons results in the formation of a covalent bond. So covalent bond is formed between electronegative elements. So it is formed between one electronegative element plus the other is also electronegative. We also usually say that when the difference in electronegativity is very small, the bond formed is called as an covalent bond. Then उसके बाद what do we have? Coordinate bond or dative bond. इसको हम पढ़ेंगे अलग से, but I'll still give you an overview. What's a coordinate bond? When there is only one donor and one acceptor. मतलब bond form करने के लिए जो दो electrons की जरूरत है वो सिर्फ कोई एक ही atom देगा. I repeat, to form a bond, the electrons which are required is given by only one particular atom. तो हम उसको क्या बोलते हैं? Coordinate bond or coordinate covalent bond. ठीक है? Which is very similar to a covalent bond. Once formed, you cannot really tell the difference between a coordinate bond and a covalent bond. बनने के बाद you cannot really change, there is no difference in the properties as well. हाँ, how is it formed? That's slightly different. वो हम करेंगे. And finally, what do we have here? Metallic bond. Metallic bond is usually formed between electro positive element. Both the elements will be electropositive. With me till here? Chalo. So on a new page, please write down chemical bonding and molecular structure. Chemical bonding and molecular structure. In this chapter, we understand the details of chemical bond formation. The details of chemical bond formation. A molecule will be formed. Only if it has lower energy and greater stability. Only if it has lower energy and greater stability than the atoms present. Next, write down potential energy and bond formation curve. Potential energy and bond formation curve. ठीक है? It's actually also called as Born-Oppenheimer curve. ठीक है? This is a simpler way of explaining what really happens during a bond formation. And यहाँ पे also we have taken a very simple example of hydrogen atom, bond formation between hydrogen atom, because हमारे पास सिर्फ एक न्यूक्लियस है और एक इलेक्ट्रॉन है. The moment if we try to do this for multi-electron system, तो थोड़ा सा कर्व भी अलग है. तो हमने सबसे सिंपलेस्ट सिस्टम के लिए ट्राई किया इसे बनाने के लिए. ओके, चलो कॉपी दिस प्लीज. Okay, now let's start with the first type of bond, which is ionic bond. Now, most of this you people have already done 10th standard में, the type of bonds, but थोड़ा सा कर लेते हैं फिर से. What's an ionic bond? Formed by transfer of, an ionic bond is a bond which is formed by transfer of electrons from an electropositive element to an electronegative element. So let's take a simple say example. Let's say I want to have a ionic or an electrovalent bond between sodium and chlorine. So what will be the first step? I have sodium, gaseous, isolated gaseous atom of sodium. This has to lose an electron and become what? A sodium, gaseous sodium cation. What is this process called as, people? This process of losing an electron, process of removing an electron from the outermost valence shell is called as ionization energy. तो यहाँ पे हम जो कर रहे हैं, the energy involved, what energy will that be? This is called as ionization energy, ionization enthalpy. कुछ याद आ रहा है? Periodic table. And this electron will be gained by whom? An isolated gaseous atom of chlorine, and this will convert into what? Chloride anion. What energy will be involved in this process? क्या energy बोलेंगे हम people? Delta H of Eg, which is electron gain enthalpy. कुछ याद आ रहा है ये? Please tell me. For chlorine, for halogens in general, electron gain enthalpy, is it exothermic or is it endothermic? Was energy released or they gained energy? Excellent, it was released. So this is negative, या हम बोल सकते हैं this is exothermic. Similarly, what about ionization energy or ionization enthalpy? Is it exothermic या endothermic? Positive मतलब आपको energy supply करना पड़ता है या energy release होता है? To remove an electron into supply energy तो हम उसको क्या बोलेंगे? Positive or endothermic. Next, then what happens? This cation of Na plus and the anion of Cl minus उनके बीच में there is a force of attraction, and that force of attraction हम क्या बोलते हैं people? What do we call that as? Ionic bond or electrovalent bond. This is that electrostatic force of attraction. But when they come close to each other, Na plus and Cl minus, they form what? Na plus and Cl minus, they come close to each other, and क्या बनता है दोनों के बीच में? NaCl. NaCl का state क्या है people? Yes or no? यहाँ पे we have a gaseous cation, यहाँ पे we have a gaseous anion, but when they come close together, they form NaCl crystal. इस crystal को we also call that as NaCl lattice. Lattice is nothing but a crystal structure. Now, if you want to really understand crystal structure, तो कुछ ऐसे imagine करो. This is not exactly the same structure NaCl का. We'll study that in the chapter solid states, but थोड़ा सा I'll try to give you an overview. ठीक है? Can you see a cube? So in an NaCl crystal, you can imagine that the corners that you see, on these corners you'll have chlorine anion. And if you see this edge, center of the edge, you can imagine that you will have cation. I repeat, this is not the exact structure, but a crystal lattice looks something like that. Every center of the edge this together is called as a crystal structure. Or you can call this as a lattice structure. Now when this crystal lattice or lattice structure is formed, it releases an energy which is called as lattice energy or lattice enthalpy. And the formation of a crystal lattice is also exothermic in nature. When all this happens, it is then an ionic bond is formed. So for an ionic bond to form, the sum of, I repeat, for an ionic bond to form, the sum of the electron gain enthalpy and the sum of the lattice enthalpy should be more negative or should be greater than the ionization enthalpy. Only when this happens can you say that an ionic bond will be formed. Anyone who did not get that? Next. If I go back to an ionic bond, let's say make a general likh raha hu. Let's say it is an ionic bond between A plus and an ionic bond between B minus. Can someone tell me what should be the ionization energy of A? Should A have a very high ionization energy or should it have a very low ionization energy? Because usko cation banna hai. It should give away that electron as soon as possible. So A should have low ionization energy. Did you people get that? Low ionization energy का मतलब, can I say it should have more metallic character? तो जो भी properties associated with low ionization energy हम उसको बोल सकते हैं. Similarly, what should be the electron affinity of B? Because B should form an anion. So what should be its electron affinity? Should it be high or should it be low? It should have very high electron affinity. With me till here? Yes or no? Next, if I go back to A, I repeat, low ionization energy, which means it should have high metallic character or it should be electropositive in nature. And B क्या होना चाहिए people? It should be electro negative in nature. The difference in electronegativity should be greater than 1.7. So when the difference in electronegativity is greater than 1.7, we can say that the two elements in between them will form what kind of bond? Ionic bond. Any questions there? Bolo re. Now, if I look at Na and Cl, how many electrons were given by Na to Cl? 1. But let's say I consider same between Mg and Cl in MgCl2. Mg पे charge कितना है यहाँ पे people? Because Mg gave how many electrons to Cl? 2. Each Cl got 1 electron each. So the number of electrons given over here were 2. Or let's say I consider some other salt. The number of electrons given is also called as its electrovalency. So electrovalency means the number of electrons transferred by or transferred from the cation to anion. उसको हम बोलते हैं electrovalency. Anyone understand that? Chal, next. Can someone tell me, in an ionic bond or ionic compounds, they usually have high melting point or low melting point? Excellent, they have high, or you can say ionic compounds have high melting point. What about their solubility? Do they have high solubility or do they have low solubility? ऐसे कुछ 10th standard तक solubility के बारे में पढ़ा है? Ionic salts are usually soluble in water. What do you mean by they're soluble in water? The moment you put that in water, unka crystal structure breaks. So if the crystal structure can easily break, we say that they'll have high solubility. If the crystal structure doesn't break easily, we say that they have low solubility. Did you people get that? Yes or no? This is छोटा सा brief about ionic bond. बाद में इसके बारे में और detail में पढ़ेंगे. Which is the second type of bond that we have, people? Covalent bond. Covalent bond is formed by mutual sharing of electrons now in ionic bond it was transfer of electron from an electropositive element to an electronegative element. Covalent bond is formed by mutual sharing of electrons between two electronegative elements. So the shortcut में लिख रहा हूँ. Can someone give me an example of a covalent bond? जो सबसे पहला आज bond बनाया, it was a bond between hydrogen and, so between hydrogen and hydrogen, what type of bond do we have? We have a single bond. What about between oxygen and oxygen? Between two oxygen atoms there is a double bond, and between two nitrogen atoms we have a triple bond. Why exactly do we have a single, double or triple bond? इसको थोड़ा आगे और समझेंगे. The number of bonds between two atoms is called as its covalency. वहाँ पे we studied something called as electrovalency. Electrovalency was the number of electrons transferred. What exactly is covalency? It is the number of covalent bonds between two atoms. That's called as its covalency. Now, can someone tell me, if I consider hydrogen and nitrogen, which is more stable or which will require more energy to break? Is it easier to break a single stick, or if I give you 3 sticks, which will require more energy to break? So out of the two, which one will require more energy to break? So more the number of bonds, greater is the bond strength and greater will be the bond energy. Next, ये डायग्राम में people when the energy reached the lowest stage where the force of attraction was equal to the force of repulsion, if I plot this, this distance is called as bond length. So bond length is the minimum distance when the force of attraction becomes equal to the force of repulsion, or basically the system has lowest energy. That's called as bond length. So if I compare bond length with bond strength, bond length is inversely proportional to bond. So bigger the bond, weaker is its strength, or vice versa. Stronger the bond, smaller will be the bond length. Did you people get that? Bolo re, yes or no? Next, covalent bonds are further classified into two types, which we'll study thoda sa later. Are further classified as polar covalent bond and non-polar covalent bond. Now what polar and non-polar means, बाद में जब टाइम आएगा we'll do that. फिलहाल के लिए just इसको कॉपी करके रखना. Now polar covalent bond compounds are soluble in polar solvents and non-polar covalent bond compounds are soluble in non-polar solvents. What are polar solvents? What are non-polar solvents? We will do that eventually. So this is second type of bond जो हमने पढ़ा था, which is covalent bond. What is the next type of bond that we have, people? After ionic bond, covalent bond, and the next we have is coordinate bond. Now what exactly is coordinate bond or dative bond? I repeat, coordinate bond or dative bond. Chalo. Let's say I have this is ammonia molecule. And what are these two electrons? They are called as lone pairs. It's actually one lone pair of electron. And what I have along with this is a hydronium ion. इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं simple words में? This is called as a proton. Now when this proton wants to form a bond with nitrogen, the proton does not have any electrons of its own. ये proton कहाँ से आया? हाइड्रोजन बीच में न्यूक्लियस है और एक इलेक्ट्रॉन है, वो एक इलेक्ट्रॉन भी निकाल दो तो what you're left with is just that nucleus with one proton. This is hydrogen atom. I repeat, you remove that electron, you're left with just one proton. What happens here is, during bond formation, ये जो दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन है, they are donated by hydrogen to form a bond. They are donated by nitrogen. We show that by an arrow. This arrow is called as a coordinate bond. In a coordinate bond, we have a donor atom and acceptor atom. Both the electrons in bond formation is given by the donor atom. Then such a bond is called as a coordinate bond. Once formed, a coordinate bond and a covalent bond is exactly the same. There's no difference between a coordinate bond and a covalent bond. Let's take one more example. I have ammonia and I have, let's say, boron trifluoride. Same thing over here. Both the electrons were given by nitrogen. What we have is called as a coordinate bond. This particular product को हम एक special नाम से बुलाते हैं. This is called as an adduct. Adduct comes from the word addition product. This is a coordinate bond or a coordinative bond. Did you people get that? Chalo. Jaldi copy this for me. Okay. So that was a basic introduction. We now get into the chapter. So in order to explain how molecules are formed and the stability of molecules, we have different theories. The first theory that we are going to study is called as Lewis Octet theory or the Octet rule, which I think majority in 10th standard तक किया है. What is octet theory? Atoms will continue to share electrons or form bonds till they reach or till they have a complete octet. What does octet mean over here, people? How many electrons? 8 electrons in their valence shell. Concern में किया हमने, they'll continue sharing electrons or continue forming bonds till they have a complete octet. In certain cases, for example, hydrogen case में it has a complete duplet. Now, you can also say the octet theory says that atoms will continue to share electrons or form bonds. Okay, first point remains the same till they reach the nearest noble gas configuration. Now, using Lewis Octet theory, we draw what are called as Lewis structures. So Lewis used this theory to explain how molecules are actually formed. So let's try and understand this and make the first Lewis structure, which is the structure of ozone molecule. Now there's a method to follow when we want to make Lewis structures. The method understand karne. Let's try and understand the method. First thing is oxygen. Atomic number of oxygen is 8. Give me the electronic configuration for oxygen. 1s2, 2s2 and 2p4. I'm only interested in valence electrons. Okay? Valence electrons matlab electrons in the last shell. So how many valence electrons are present in oxygen? Number of valence electrons will be electrons in the last shell, so which is 2 plus 4. Number of valence electrons are 6. Now one oxygen atom has 6 valence electrons. So 3 oxygen atoms will have how many? So total, because since we have 3 oxygen atoms in ozone, we can say that the number of valence electrons in ozone will be 6 times 3, that is 18. So the first thing that we have to do is, आपके पास जो भी molecule दिया है उसके atoms की valence electrons add करो, find the total number of valence electrons. Step 1. Step 2. We need to divide the 18 electrons in such a way that all the atoms should have a complete octet. I repeat, वो जो 18 electrons है आप O3 में ऐसे divide करोगे so that all of them have a complete octet. ये कैसे करेंगे? Let's try and understand that. I have 3 oxygen atoms. So oxygen atom number 1, 2 and 3. And I have to divide 18 electrons among them. What we do in first step is give them a single bond between each other. Single bond matlab ek bond mein there are how many electrons? 2. So what we have done is first oxygen और second oxygen के बीच में एक single bond दिया. Second oxygen and third oxygen के बीच में भी I have given a single bond. So out of 18 electrons, how many have I used? I repeat, out of 18, how many have I used? 4. How many left? How many left, people? 14. Now divide the 14 in such a way, I repeat, कि octet complete हो. So single bond देना है. Then क्या करना है? Start completing their octets. ये first oxygen, octet complete. How many electrons I have used now in total? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Out of 18 I have used 10. ठीक है? Second oxygen, do you see a complete octet now? Now total में how many electrons have I used? I think I've used 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 2s are 14. How many left? Only 4 were left. Is the octet complete for the last oxygen? Last oxygen के पास कितने electrons है? 6, but होने कितने चाहिए? So what we do here is, I can remove these two from here and उनको मैं यहाँ place कर सकता हूँ. Now do all of them have a complete octet? First oxygen, octet complete. Second, yes, octet complete. And third, also has a complete octet. So, if I see the first oxygen and the second oxygen, between the first and oxygen there are 2 electrons, matlab there is a single bond. Between the second and third oxygen, there is a double bond. The first oxygen has how many lone pairs? 3. So 1, 2, 3 lone pairs on the first oxygen. What about the second oxygen? How many lone pairs? There's 1. Third oxygen, how many lone pairs? This is how the octet theory helps us find the structure of molecules by making sure that all of them have a complete octet. Let's take one more example. The second molecule that we have is, let's say, carbon dioxide. Step 1. Number of valence electrons in carbon. Carbon का atomic number क्या है people? 6. Electronic configuration 1s2, 2s2, 2p2. But I am only interested in the last shell. So valence electrons कितने हो जाएंगे? 2 plus 2. So number of valence electrons in carbon is 4. We know that number of valence electrons in oxygen is 6. Number of valence electrons in oxygen. Therefore, number of valence electrons in carbon dioxide 4 plus 6 times 2, 2 times 6. Total कितना हो गया people? So I have 16 valence electrons. Same thing again. You have to divide the 16 valence electrons in such a way that all of them have a complete octet. This is the skeleton for CO2. First step में क्या करते हैं हम? दोनों को क्या देंगे? एक single bond. So out of 16 electrons कितने यूज कर लिए? 4. How many left? 12. क्या करेंगे? Let's start completing the octets. First का complete किया. Then second का complete किया. How many electrons have I used? 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pardon me, 14. How many left? 2. One of them has an incomplete octet, which is the last fellow oxygen. How will you complete its octet now? Can I remove this? Place it here. Is the octet complete now? Next step. ऊपर वाला भी निकाल दो. What about now? Is the octet complete? चलो फिर structure बनाओ मेरे लिए. How does the structure look like? ये carbon है. There was an oxygen here and here. Oxygen and carbon के बीच में what do you see here? How many lone pairs? What about this carbon and the next oxygen? Triple bond. Is there any lone pair in the carbon? Or on the carbon? No. Oxygen? Did you people get that? We can have one more structure. I start with the same single bond each. Total कितने electrons थे? 16. ये फर्स्ट का ऑक्टेट कंप्लीट किया था, सेकेंड का ऑक्टेट कंप्लीट किया था, something like this. चलो, now see what we do here. यहाँ से 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन निकाला, putting them here. ठीक है, repeat. यहाँ से I removed 2, I gave it to this oxygen. Now what can we do is, this has 6, this has 6. If I remove these 2 from here, place them here, and if I remove these 2 from here and place them here, do all of them now have a complete octet? Yes. So CO, what is there between the first and second, sorry, first oxygen and carbon? There's a double bond. यहाँ पे भी there's a, and each oxygen has 2 lone pairs. Even this is a structure of CO2. Did people get that? Chalo. Start copying this. Okay. Now, once we've done Lewis structure, we calculate people something called as the formal charge. Formal charge का मतलब क्या होता है? Formal charge, you can say, is the individual charge that atoms carry in a molecule. So even though, let's say, if we look at CO2 या ozone, हमको लगता है CO2 and ozone, they are neutral molecule. Yes, they are neutral. But individual atoms in them do carry a charge. And formal charge कैसे calculate करते हैं? Formal charge का formula is, formal charge is equal to number of valence electrons minus number of lone pair electrons minus half into number of bond pair electrons or number of shared electrons. This is the formula to calculate formal charge. Now using this formula, we will calculate the formal charge on all the atoms present in these molecules. So let's start with ये वाले ozone structure से. Ozone, I repeat, is neutral, but individual oxygens will carry a charge. So let's try and find their formal charge. So ये first oxygen पे find करते हैं. What is the formula? Number of valence electrons. Number of valence electrons in oxygen is 6 minus. How many lone pair electrons do you see on that oxygen? 3 lone pairs. So 6 electrons. Each pair is 2. So lone pair electrons. Minus half into bond pair या shared. This oxygen is sharing how many electrons with this oxygen? 6 minus 6 is 0. 0 minus 1. So ये oxygen पे formal charge कितना हो गया? -1. अब ये वाले ऑक्सीजन पे कैलकुलेट करते हैं. सेम थिंग. सबसे पहला नंबर ऑफ वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स 6 माइनस हाउ मेनी लोन पेयर इलेक्ट्रॉन्स डू यू सी? 2 minus half into this oxygen has shared how many electrons? 2 with the left, 4 with the right, total हो गया 6. Please do this and tell me what do you get? We get plus 1. 6 minus 2 minus 4, sorry 3. So that is 6 minus 5, that is plus 1. Now ये oxygen पे आ गया -1, ये oxygen पे आ गया +1. So the overall charge has already become 0. So when I will calculate it for this oxygen, I know that I am going to get the formal charge as 0. फिर भी calculate करके देख लेते हैं. Valence electrons 6, number of lone pair electrons 4 minus half into 4. Did you people get that? Yes or no? Let's take one more example. Let's find the formal charge on all the atoms in this particular structure of carbon dioxide. Let's start with the first oxygen. Number of valence electrons 6. Number of lone pair electrons 6 minus half into number of shared electrons 2. इसको अभी सॉल्व किया था, इस पे फॉर्मल चार्ज आ गया -1. Let's calculate the formal charge on this carbon. Number of valence electrons in carbon 4 minus. Is there any lone pair on this carbon? 0 minus half into. How many electrons is this carbon sharing? 8. So total कितना हो गया ये? 0. Now if this oxygen is -1, this carbon is 0. I know that carbon dioxide is neutral. So what is the charge? What is the charge going to be on this oxygen? +1. बिना सॉल्व किए मुझे पता है वो +1 आने वाला है. Let's solve. Number of valence electrons on oxygen 6 minus half into number of lone pairs. Pardon me. 6 minus number of lone pairs 2 minus half into number of shared pairs 6. कितना हो गया वो? That is how you calculate formal charge. इनके लिए formal charge calculate करो. There are some more examples. इनके लिए भी आप formal charge calculate करना. ठीक है? We will continue with Lewis Octet theory. We have drawbacks of octet theory. We will continue with that next class. ठीक है? Thank you everyone.